This man invited his childless ex-wife to his wedding to mock her, but she came with quadruplets. Did you really think the woman you called barren would miss your big day? I watched my ex-husband's face turn the color of ash as 4 identical children, each one carrying the Blackwood name he'd tried so hard to erase, ran past his horrified wedding guests toward the fountain where his new bride stood frozen in her $1,000 gown. The champagne flute slipped from Darius Thornfield's fingers, shattering against the marble steps of Grandview Estate as 4 identical toddlers in matching navy suits tumbled out of a pearl-white Maserati behind me, their laughter cutting through the stunned silence of his wedding reception like a blade through silk. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request.
Please subscribe.
Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and how this story touched you. My name is Seraphina Blackwood. 3 years ago, I was Seraphina Thornfield, begging fertility doctors to fix what my husband called my broken body. Today, I'm watching that same husband's wedding reception turn into a masterclass in cosmic justice, and honestly, I've never felt more alive. But let me paint you the full picture of this beautiful chaos unfolding at Grandview Estate. Picture this: 200 of Millbrook Heights elite, all dressed in their finest, gathered under crystal chandeliers and cascading white roses. The kind of wedding that gets featured in magazines, where every detail screams perfection and money. Darius always did love his appearances. There he stands, my former husband, in his custom Armani tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars. Darius Thornfield, 34 years old, heir to Thornfield Industries, the man who once told me I was defective goods because my womb wouldn't cooperate with his timeline. His dark hair is perfectly styled, his jaw still as sharp as the day I fell for him. But right now he looks like he's seen a ghost. And maybe he has. Because the woman he discarded, the one he called worthless, just walked into his fairy tale with 4 living, breathing pieces of evidence that he was catastrophically wrong about everything. Mommy, look. A princess castle. Phoenix, my eldest by 3 minutes, points at the elaborate ice sculpture centerpiece, his bright green eyes, so much like mine, wide with wonder. He's wearing the navy blue suit I picked out specifically for this occasion, his dark curls bouncing as he tugs on my emerald green dress. Can we play in the water, Mama? Sage asks, already gravitating toward the fountain with her siblings River and Storm trailing behind her like a perfectly coordinated parade of chaos. They're all 4 years old, born on the same miraculous day that changed everything, and they move through this world with the fearless confidence that only comes from being deeply, unconditionally loved. The guests are staring now. Whispers ripple through the crowd like wildfire. I can hear fragments. Is that? 4 children. But she couldn't. How is this possible? Oh, how I've waited for this moment. Vivian Vivian Thornfield now, stands beside her new husband in a dress that probably cost more than my first car. She's beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde, petite, with the kind of delicate features that photograph well. Everything I'm not, everything Darius apparently decided he wanted instead. Her hand rests protectively over her barely visible bump, and I can see the confusion and fear warring in her blue eyes as she tries to process what's happening. Darius, she whispers, her voice carrying just enough for me to hear. Who is that woman? And those children? But Darius can't answer. He's too busy staring at Storm, who's now climbing onto the edge of the fountain with the fearless determination of a child who's never been told he can't do something. My youngest son, younger than Sage by 7 minutes, has his father's stubborn chin and my wild spirit. Storm, careful baby, I call out, my voice cutting through the tension like a warm knife through butter. I move toward my children with the grace of a woman who's learned to command any room she enters, my heels clicking against the marble with deliberate precision. The crowd parts for me like the Red Sea. Some faces I recognize, Darius's college friends, his business associates, people who used to invite us to dinner parties when I was still trying to be the perfect wife. Their expressions range from shock to curiosity to barely concealed delight at the drama unfolding before them. Seraphina. Darius finally finds his voice, and it comes out as barely more than a croak. What? How? What are you doing here? I turn to face him fully for the first time in 3 years, and I have to admit, there's a part of me that still remembers loving this man. The part that used to trace the scar on his chin from a childhood accident, that used to make his coffee exactly how he liked it every morning, that used to believe his promises about forever. But that woman is gone. She died the day he threw divorce papers at me and told me I was wasting his time. You invited me, remember? I pull the cream-colored invitation from my purse, the one that arrived at my penthouse in Willowmere 2 weeks ago. Mr. and Mrs. Darius Thornfield request the pleasure of your company. I read aloud, my voice carrying across the silent reception. Though I notice you addressed it to my old name, Seraphina Thornfield. I smile, and it's sharp enough to cut glass. That woman doesn't exist anymore. What do you think happened to transform Seraphina from the broken woman Darius left behind into this confident force of nature? Drop your theories in the comments below. I have a feeling some of you are going to be shocked by the truth. The invitation had been Darius's final insult, his last attempt to twist the knife. He'd wanted me to see his happiness, his new wife, his coming baby, everything I supposedly couldn't give him. He'd wanted me to feel small and broken and forgotten. Instead, he'd given me the perfect stage for my comeback. Daddy, look what we found. River's voice cuts through the tension as she runs toward us, her small hands cupped around something precious. She's always been the explorer, the one who finds magic in the smallest things. The word Daddy hits the crowd like a physical blow. Gasps echo across the reception area. Vivian's face goes white as fresh snow. But River isn't running to Darius. She's running to the tall, dark-haired man who's just stepped out of the Maserati's driver's seat, adjusting his cufflinks with the casual confidence of someone who owns half of Millbrook Heights. Alexander Blackwood. My husband. The father my children have known since they were 6 months old. The man who proved that sometimes the universe doesn't just give you what you need, it gives you everything you never dared to dream of. He's 42, silver threading through his black hair in a way that makes him look distinguished rather than old. Where Darius is sharp angles and nervous energy, Alexander is solid strength and quiet power. He moves through the world like he owns it, which, considering his net worth, isn't far from the truth. What did you find, little star? Alexander asks River, crouching down to her level with the patience of a man who's never once made my children feel like burdens or inconveniences. Pretty rocks. For Mama's garden. River opens her hands to reveal a collection of smooth stones from the estate's decorative landscaping. Those are perfect, Alexander tells her seriously, as if she's just presented him with diamonds. Your mama loves beautiful things, doesn't she? Just like us. Sage chimes in, appearing at his side with Phoenix and Storm in tow. Daddy Alex says we're Mama's most beautiful treasures. The way my children say, Daddy Alex, with such pure love and trust, it's like watching Darius's world crumble in real time. This is what he threw away. This is what he said I could never have. Alexander straightens and walks toward me, his presence commanding the attention of every person at this reception. When he reaches me, he doesn't hesitate. He slides his arm around my waist and presses a kiss to my temple, a gesture so natural and loving that it speaks of years of practice. Mrs. Blackwood, he murmurs against my ear, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. You look absolutely radiant. Mr. Blackwood, I reply, leaning into his warmth. Ready for the show? His laugh is low and rich. Darling, I've been ready since the day you told me about this invitation. The silence stretches like a taut wire ready to snap. 200 guests, frozen in a tableau of shock and anticipation, waiting to see what happens next. The only sounds are the gentle splash of the fountain and my children's delighted giggles as they explore their new playground. Darius finally finds his voice, though it comes out strangled. Seraphina, we need to talk. Privately. Oh, I don't think so. I adjust the diamond tennis bracelet on my wrist, a gift from Alexander for our first anniversary. You made our business very public when you served me divorce papers at my sister's birthday party, remember? In front of my entire family? I let that memory hang in the air like smoke. Besides, your guests seem fascinated by the entertainment. And they are. Phones are discreetly emerging from purses and jacket pockets. This is going to be all over social media within the hour, and we all know it. Vivian steps forward, her hand protectively cradling her small bump. I'm sorry, but who exactly are you? And why are your children calling that man daddy when? She gestures helplessly between Darius and the kids. When what, sweetheart? I turn to face her fully, and I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. When they look exactly like your husband. Because they do. Phoenix has Darius's stubborn chin and my green eyes. Sage has his dark hair and my smile. River has his height and my curiosity. Storm has his intensity and my wild spirit. The resemblance is unmistakable to anyone who's looking. Which everyone is. Very intently. That's impossible, Darius whispers, but his voice lacks conviction. His eyes keep darting between my children and me, doing the math, remembering timelines. You couldn't, the doctor said. The doctors said a lot of things. I step closer to him, close enough that he can smell my perfume, the same one I wore on our wedding day, chosen deliberately for this moment. They said I had unexplained infertility. They said my chances were less than 5%. They said I might never carry a child to term. Phoenix chooses that moment to run over and wrap his arms around my legs, looking up at me with those bright green eyes. Mama, can we go see the horses? Uncle Alex said there might be horses. Uncle Alex. Darius's voice cracks on the words. That's what they called him before I adopted them, Alexander explains, his voice carrying easily across the reception area. He's moved closer, flanking me like a protective wall of expensive suit and quiet menace. Before Seraphina did me the honor of becoming my wife and making me their father in every way that matters. The crowd is eating this up. I can see Darius's mother, Patricia Thornfield, standing near the head table with her mouth hanging open. She'd always been cold to me, always made little comments about my failure to produce grandchildren. Now she's staring at 4 potential grandchildren who will never know her name. But how? Vivian's voice is barely a whisper. When? Oh, that's the beautiful part, I say, lifting Phoenix into my arms. He immediately snuggles against me, his small hand playing with my necklace. Would you like to know the exact timeline, Vivian? Because I remember it perfectly. Darius goes even paler. Seraphina, don't. Don't what? Don't tell your new wife that I got pregnant exactly 3 weeks after you threw me away. Don't mention that while you were celebrating your freedom and telling everyone who'd listen that you dodged a bullet with your defective ex-wife, I was carrying 4 of your children. The gasp that goes up from the crowd is audible. Phones are definitely recording now. Don't tell her that while you were already dating her. I nod toward Vivian, who looks like she might faint. I was on bed rest, trying to keep 4 babies alive inside a body you'd convinced me was broken? That's not. We weren't. Vivian starts, but the math is simple enough for everyone to do. Oh, but you were. I continue, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. Because I have the photos, darling. The ones from your romantic weekend in Aspen. December 15th through 18th, 2021. I was 12 weeks pregnant at the time, though I didn't know it yet. Funny how life works out, isn't it? Alexander's hand finds the small of my back, a steadying presence. He knows the story, knows every painful detail of those months when I thought my world had ended. He was there for the aftermath, for the healing, for the rebuilding. The divorce was final in January. I continue, setting Phoenix down so he can rejoin his siblings. I found out about the pregnancy in February. 4 heartbeats on that ultrasound screen, can you imagine? After years of being told I was barren, suddenly I was carrying quadruplets. Darius is shaking his head like he can deny reality through sheer force of will. You would have told me. You would have. Would I? I laugh, and it's not a pleasant sound. Tell the man who called me defective goods? The man who said I was wasting his time? The man who told me I should be grateful anyone wanted to marry someone as broken as me? The crowd is completely silent now except for my children's happy chatter as they explore the fountain area. They're oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them, secure in their world of love and acceptance. I thought about it, I admit, for about 5 minutes. Then I remembered what you said the day you left. Thank God, we never had kids together. Can you imagine passing on whatever's wrong with you? Vivian makes a small, wounded sound. Even she can see how cruel those words were. So no, Darius. I didn't tell you. Instead, I moved to Willowmere, bought a house with a big yard and a swing set, and prepared to raise 4 children who would never have to wonder if their father wanted them. But the money. Darius starts, then stops, realizing how that sounds. The money? Alexander steps forward, and his voice carries the kind of quiet authority that comes from owning half the city. You're worried about money? How refreshingly honest. He pulls out his phone and shows the screen to Darius. This is the trust fund I established for each of the children the day Seraphina and I married. $25 million each, accessible when they turn 25. Their college funds are separate, of course, as are their investment portfolios. The number hits the crowd like a physical blow. Even at this level of society, $100 million in trust funds is serious money. You see, Darius, I say, watching his face cycle through emotions like a broken slot machine, when you threw me away, you didn't just lose a wife. You lost 4 children who will grow up knowing they're wanted, loved, and valued. You lost the chance to be the father they call when they're scared or excited or proud. You lost bedtime stories and first steps and Christmas mornings. Storm chooses that moment to run over, his little face bright with excitement. Mama, there's a big cake. Can we have some? Of course, baby, I tell him, smoothing his dark hair. But let's ask the bride and groom first. It's their special day, after all. The irony in my voice is thick enough to cut with a knife. Storm turns to Darius with the fearless curiosity of a 4-year-old. Are you the cake man? Darius stares down at his son, because there's no denying it now. The resemblance is too strong, and for a moment, I see something crack in his expression. Pain, maybe. Regret. The beginning of understanding what he's lost. Darius's voice breaks. But Storm has already lost interest and run back to his siblings, leaving his biological father standing there with his mouth open and his world in ruins. What do you think Darius is feeling right now, seeing the children he never knew existed? And how do you think Vivian is processing all of this? Let me know in the comments, because this is just the beginning of the revelations. Seraphina, Vivian says suddenly, her voice stronger than before. If those children are really Darius's, then legally, they're Alexander's. I interrupt smoothly. Full adoption, completed 18 months ago. Darius signed away any parental rights when he signed our divorce papers. There's a lovely little clause about any future children born from our marriage. His lawyer was very thorough. The color drains from Darius's face as he remembers. He'd been so eager to be free of me, so certain I'd never be able to have children anyway, that he'd signed everything without reading the fine print. You planned this, he whispers. All of this. The invitation, bringing them here. Oh, darling. I smile, and it's radiant and terrible. I didn't plan anything. You invited me, remember? I just decided to accept. With my family. Alexander checks his watch, a gesture so casual it's almost insulting. Speaking of which, we should probably head to dinner soon. We have reservations at Le Bernardin. The children are excited to try the tasting menu. Le Bernardin? Patricia Thornfield speaks for the first time, her voice faint. But that's impossible to get into. Not when you own it, Alexander replies mildly. The power play is subtle but devastating. This isn't just about money. It's about the life I've built, the world I now inhabit, the level I've risen to since Darius discarded me. Mama. Sage appears at my side, tugging on my dress. The pretty lady looks sad. Should we share our cookies with her? She's looking at Vivian with the pure empathy that only children possess. My daughter, offering comfort to the woman who married her biological father, completely unaware of the complexity of the situation. That's very sweet of you, baby girl, I tell her, my heart swelling with pride. But I think the pretty lady needs some time with her husband right now. Vivian's eyes fill with tears as she looks at Sage, this beautiful little girl who could have been her stepdaughter in another life, another timeline where Darius had been a different man. They're beautiful, she whispers. Your children. They're absolutely beautiful. Thank you, I say, and for the first time, my voice is genuinely warm. They're my greatest joy. Seraphina. Darius's voice is broken now, all his arrogance stripped away. Can we please talk? Just for a minute. I look at him, really look at him, and see the man I once loved buried under years of regret and the dawning realization of what he's lost. But that woman who loved him is gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who knows her worth. We are talking Darius. Right here, right now, in front of all your friends and family. Just like you wanted when you sent that invitation. That's not.
I didn't mean.
What did you mean? I step closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries to every corner of the reception. Did you mean to hurt me? To make me feel small and forgotten? To rub your happiness in my face? He can't answer because we both know that's exactly what he meant. Well, congratulations, I continue. Mission accomplished. You've shown me exactly what my life could have been if I'd stayed broken, if I'd kept believing I wasn't enough, if I'd never learned to love myself the way I deserve to be loved. I turn to Alexander, who's been watching this entire exchange with the patience of a man who's completely secure in his place in my life. Ready to go, my love? Always, he says, offering me his arm. I call to my children, who come running like a small parade of joy and chaos. Phoenix and Storm race each other. Sage stops to pick a flower from the landscaping, and River waves goodbye to the fountain like it's an old friend. As we walk toward the car, I can feel 200 pairs of eyes on us. I can hear the whispers starting, the phones buzzing with messages and posts. By tomorrow, this will be the story everyone in Millbrook Heights is talking about. But right now, all I care about is the feeling of Alexander's hand in mine and my children's laughter echoing across the marble courtyard. Mama, Phoenix says as Alexander helps him into his car seat. Why was that man crying? I look back at the reception, where Darius stands alone among his guests, Vivian having disappeared inside the estate. His perfect wedding has become a wake for the life he could have had. Sometimes, baby, I tell my son, people cry when they realize they've made a very big mistake. Can they fix it? I buckle Sage into her seat, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Some mistakes can't be fixed, sweetheart. That's why we have to be very careful about how we treat the people we love. As Alexander starts the engine, I take one last look at Grandview Estate. At the man who once made me believe I was broken, now broken himself. At the wedding reception that will be remembered not for its elegance, but for the moment karma arrived in a Maserati with 4 children and a woman who refused to stay defeated. The last thing I see as we drive away is Darius, still standing in the same spot, staring after us like a man watching his entire world disappear. And you know what? It feels absolutely perfect. The drive back to our penthouse in Willowmere should have been triumphant. The children chattered excitedly about the princess castle and the fountain, already planning elaborate games for our own backyard. Alexander's hand rested on my thigh as he navigated the winding roads, occasionally glancing at me with that knowing smile that said he was proud of how I'd handled myself. But as the adrenaline faded, something else crept in. Something I hadn't expected.
Doubt.
Mama, why didn't the cake man talk to us? River asked from her car seat, her voice cutting through my thoughts. He looked sad. Some grown-ups don't know how to talk to children, baby, I replied, but the words felt hollow. The image of Darius's face when Storm had asked if he was the cake man kept replaying in my mind. The way his expression had cracked, just for a moment, before shutting down completely. That's silly, Sage declared with 4-year-old certainty. Talking to kids is easy. You just say hi and ask about their favorite things. If only it were that simple. By the time we reached home, a sprawling penthouse overlooking Willowmere Lake that Alexander had bought for us after our wedding, the children were getting cranky. It was past their usual dinner time, and the excitement of the day was wearing off. Bath time, little monsters, I announced, trying to inject my usual energy into the routine. But Alexander caught my arm as I headed toward the stairs. Hey, he said softly, his dark eyes searching my face. You okay? I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile. Just tired. It was a big day. He didn't believe me. Alexander never believed my lies, which was both wonderful and infuriating, but he let it slide. I'll handle bath time. You go pour yourself some wine and decompress. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt restless, unsettled in a way I couldn't name. While Alexander wrangled 4 overtired children upstairs, I found myself standing in our living room, staring out at the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson, and I should have felt peaceful.
Victorious, even.
Instead, I felt empty. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lyra. Holy shit, Sarah. It's all over Instagram already. #KarmaIsABitch is trending. You're a legend. Then another from my best friend Maya. Girl, I am living for this. That man's face when he saw the kids. Chef's kiss. And another from my former colleague. Saw the videos. You looked absolutely stunning. He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as those beautiful babies. The messages kept coming. Screenshots of social media posts, videos taken by wedding guests, memes already being created. The internet had latched onto the story with the fervor of a pack of wolves, and Darius was being torn apart in the comments. Imagine throwing away a woman like that and then having the audacity to invite her to your wedding. Those children are gorgeous. His loss is definitely that other man's gain. The way she handled herself with such class while destroying him. Icon behavior. I should have been reveling in it. This was everything I'd wanted when I decided to accept that invitation. Public vindication. Proof that I'd not only survived but thrived. Evidence that Darius had made the biggest mistake of his life. So, why did I feel like I was going to throw up? Mama? Phoenix appeared at the top of the stairs in his dinosaur pajamas, his hair still damp from his bath. Are you sad? No, baby. I called up to him. Just thinking. About the cake man? Out of the mouths of babes. Go brush your teeth, I told him. I'll be up in a minute for stories. But I didn't move from the window. Instead, I found myself thinking about the early days with Darius before everything went wrong. The way he used to bring me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. How he'd hold my hand during movies, even the romantic comedies he pretended to hate. The night he'd proposed, getting down on one knee in the same restaurant where we'd had our first date, his hands shaking as he told me I was his whole world. Had that man been real? Or had I just imagined the love I thought I'd seen in his eyes? My phone rang, startling me out of my reverie. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Millbrook Heights. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Hello. Seraphina. Darius's voice was rough, like he'd been crying or shouting or both. Please don't hang up. I should have. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to end the call, to block his number, to protect the peace I'd built for myself and my children. Instead, I found myself sinking onto the couch, the phone pressed to my ear. What do you want, Darius? I want to explain. I want to... God, Sarah, I had no idea. If I'd known about the babies. You would have what? The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Suddenly decided I wasn't defective? Magically developed the capacity to love someone other than yourself. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you told me I was wasting your time? Was it fair when you said you were grateful we never had children because you wouldn't want to pass on whatever was wrong with me? Silence on the other end of the line. Was it fair when you served me divorce papers at my sister's birthday party and told everyone who'd listen that you'd dodged a bullet? I was angry, he said finally. I was frustrated and angry, and I said things I didn't mean.
No, Darius.
You said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect there to be consequences. Sarah, please. Those children, they're mine. They're my blood, They're Alexander's. I cut him off. In every way that matters. He's the one who held my hair back when morning sickness hit. He's the one who assembled their cribs and painted their nursery. He's the one who's been there for every fever, every nightmare, every milestone. But I'm their father. No, I said quietly. You're their sperm donor. There's a difference. The words hung between us like a blade. I could hear him breathing on the other end, could almost feel his pain through the phone. And God help me, part of me felt sorry for him. Sarah, he whispered, I know I don't deserve it, but could I see them? Just once? I just want to look at them and know that they're real. Why? The question came out before I could stop it. So, you can decide if they're worth claiming now? So you can figure out if having children might be good for your image. I'm not. You're not what, Darius? The same man who told me children were just accessories to complete the perfect life? The same man who scheduled our intimacy around ovulation calendars and then blamed me when it didn't work fast enough. I've changed. Have you? Or are you just panicking because your perfect wedding turned into a public humiliation? Another long silence. Vivian left, he said finally. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?
Was I?
I thought about Vivian's face when she'd seen the children, the way she'd looked at Sage with such longing. She was pregnant, probably scared, definitely not prepared for the chaos I'd brought into her life. Yes, I said and meant it. I am. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of our mess. Our mess, he repeated. So, you admit there's still something between us. The only thing between us is 4 children you'll never know and a past you can't undo. Sarah. Don't. I stood up, pacing to the window again. Don't you dare try to make this about us. There is no us. There hasn't been for 3 years. But if I'd known... If you'd known what? You would have stayed married to the woman you called broken? You would have pretended to love me for the sake of the children. I did love you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because I believed them, but because of how much I'd once needed to hear them. No, Darius. You loved the idea of me. You loved having a wife who made you look good, who didn't challenge you, who was grateful for whatever scraps of affection you threw her way. But you never loved me. If you had, you would have stood by me when things got difficult, instead of running the moment I couldn't give you what you wanted on your timeline. That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Darius, in all those months of fertility treatments and disappointment, did you ever once tell me that I was enough? That you loved me regardless of whether we had children? Did you ever make me feel like I was more than just a potential incubator for your legacy? Silence. That's what I thought. Sarah, please. I know I made mistakes, but those children, they're mine too. I have rights. You have nothing, I said, my voice turning to ice. You signed away any rights when you divorced me. Remember? Your lawyer made sure of that. I could fight it. I could take you to court. You could try. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. But you won't, because you know what would happen. Every detail of our marriage would become public record. Every cruel thing you said, every way you made me feel worthless, every moment you chose your pride over our relationship. Is that really the legacy you want? I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. Besides, I continued, Alexander's lawyers are very good. And very expensive. How's your legal fund looking these days? Because I heard Thornfield Industries has been struggling since the Henderson account pulled out. Another silence. Longer this time. How did you? I pay attention, Darius. I always did. You just never noticed. Upstairs, I could hear Alexander reading bedtime stories, his deep voice doing different character voices that made the children giggle. The sound was warm and safe, and everything I'd built my new life around. I have to go, I said. My children need me. Sarah, wait. Goodbye, Darius. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. Then I sat there for a long moment, staring at the phone in my hands, trying to process what I was feeling. Regret? No, that wasn't right. Sadness? Maybe. But not for him. For the woman I used to be, the one who'd believed his lies about love and forever. Relief? Definitely. Because talking to him had reminded me exactly why I'd been right to walk away, why I'd been right to build a life without him.
Mama.
Sage's voice drifted down from upstairs. Story time. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and headed upstairs to my real life. The one filled with bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, and a man who'd never once made me question my worth. But as I climbed the stairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That Darius wouldn't just disappear quietly into the night. And I was right. What do you think Darius will do next? Will he respect Seraphina's boundaries, or will he try to force his way into the children's lives? Share your predictions in the comments, because things are about to get much more complicated. 3 days later, I was beginning to think I'd overestimated Darius's persistence. Life had returned to its comfortable rhythm. Morning coffee with Alexander before he left for the office, playground time with the children, afternoon naps that I actually got to enjoy now that they were 4 and slightly more manageable. I should have known better. I was loading the kids into my Range Rover for our weekly grocery run when I saw him. Darius, sitting in a black BMW across the street from our building, wearing sunglasses like some kind of discount private investigator. Mama, who's that man? River asked, following my gaze with the uncanny awareness children have for adult tension. Nobody important, sweetheart, I said, but my hands were shaking as I buckled her into her car seat. He followed us to the grocery store, kept his distance, but I could feel his presence like a weight on my shoulders. The children were oblivious, chattering about whether we should get the dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets or the regular ones, but I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. Excuse me, are you Seraphina Blackwood? I turned to find a young woman with a press badge and a hungry expression. Behind her, a photographer was already raising his camera. I'm sorry, I don't speak to reporters, I said, instinctively moving to shield my children. Just a quick comment about the wedding incident. Our readers are dying to know. No comment. I grabbed the nearest cart and started walking quickly toward the entrance, but more reporters were emerging from seemingly nowhere. Someone must have tipped them off. Mrs. Blackwood, is it true that Darius Thornfield is the biological father? Are you planning to pursue child support? How does your husband feel about raising another man's children? The questions came like bullets, and suddenly Phoenix was crying. overwhelmed by the chaos and the strangers with cameras. Sage pressed herself against my legs, while River and Storm looked around with wide, frightened eyes. "Please," I said, trying to keep my voice calm for the children's sake. "Leave us alone." But they smelled blood in the water. More cameras appeared, more questions, more invasion of the peaceful life I'd built for my family. That's when Darius appeared. "Back off," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "All of you.
Now.
Mr. Thornfield, can you confirm these are your biological children?" I said back off. There was something dangerous in his tone now, something that made the reporters take a step back. "You're scaring the kids." And they were. Storm was now crying too, reaching up for me with desperate little hands. This was exactly what I'd wanted to avoid, exactly why I'd kept them away from this world of public scrutiny and media attention. "Come on," Darius said, appearing at my elbow. "My car's right here. I'll get you out of this." Every instinct I had screamed at me not to trust him, not to accept his help. But my children were scared, and the reporters were closing in again, and sometimes you have to choose the lesser of two evils. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. He led us to his BMW, helping me get the children into the back seat while keeping himself between us and the cameras. For a moment, it felt almost like old times, Darius protecting his family, taking charge of a crisis. Then I remembered that he'd probably called the reporters himself. "Did you set this up?" I asked once we were safely inside the car, the children's tears finally subsiding.
What?
"No." He looked genuinely shocked. "Sarah, I would never put the kids in danger like that." "Wouldn't you? It's awfully convenient that you were right there when the media circus started." "I was following you," he admitted, starting the engine. "I know how that sounds, but I needed to see them."
To see you.
"To try to understand how this is real." "So you've been stalking us." "I've been trying to figure out how to approach you without making things worse." "Well, congratulations. You've made things infinitely worse." In the back seat, Phoenix had stopped crying and was looking at Darius with curious eyes. "Are you the sad man from the Princess Castle?" Darius glanced in the rearview mirror, and I saw his hands tighten on the steering wheel. "Yeah, buddy. I'm the sad man." "Why are you sad?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that you're sad because you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you? "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Darius said finally. "Big mistakes that make them very sad." "Daddy Alex says mistakes are for learning," Sage chimed in. "He says if you learn from them, they're not really mistakes anymore. They're lessons." "Daddy Alex sounds very smart." "He is," River said enthusiastically. "He knows everything about everything. And he makes the best pancakes in the whole world." I watched Darius's face in the mirror as his children, because they were his, biologically at least, talked about the man who'd taken his place. The pain there was so raw, it was almost hard to look at. "Where are we going?" I asked, realizing we'd been driving for several minutes without any clear destination. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just wanted to get you away from those vultures." "Take us home." "Sarah, please. Can we talk? Somewhere private where the kids can play, and we can figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out. There's everything to figure out." His voice rose, then immediately dropped when Storm whimpered.
"Sorry, buddy."
I didn't mean to be loud. "It's okay," Storm said with the easy forgiveness of childhood. "Sometimes people need to use their outside voices inside. Mama says it happens when feelings get too big." Darius looked at me in the mirror. "You always were good with kids. Even when we thought. Even when we didn't know." "Don't," I warned. "Mama, I'm hungry," Phoenix announced, effectively ending the moment. "Me too," Sage agreed. "Can we get the dinosaur nuggets now?" I looked at my children, tired, hungry, confused by the morning's chaos, and made a decision I knew I'd probably regret. There's a park about 10 minutes from here, I told Darius. Willowmere Commons. It has a playground and a cafe. We can get the kids some lunch and talk. Thank you, he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at a picnic table while the children played on the elaborate playground equipment. I'd bought them Happy Meals from the cafe, and they were contentedly munching chicken nuggets while exploring the castle-themed play structure. They're incredible, Darius said, watching Phoenix help Storm climb up to the slide. Look how Phoenix takes care of his little brother. And Sage, she's so confident, so sure of herself. They're good kids, I agreed, keeping my voice neutral. River has your curiosity. I can see it in the way she examines everything before she touches it. And Storm has your stubborn streak. He's been trying to master that climbing wall for 10 minutes and refuses to give up. We sat in silence for a moment, watching our children play. It should have been peaceful, but the tension between us was thick enough to cut. I keep thinking about what you said, Darius said finally. About me never telling you that you were enough. Darius. You were right. I never did. I was so focused on what I wanted, what I thought we needed, that I never stopped to appreciate what I had. This isn't going to work, I said, standing up. This whole whatever this is. You can't just apologize your way back into our lives. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are. You're sitting here watching them play and thinking about what you lost, and you're hoping that if you say the right words, if you show enough remorse, somehow you can undo the last 3 years. He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe I am. Well, you can't. Those children don't know you. They don't need you. They have a father who loves them unconditionally, who's never made them feel like burdens or mistakes or consolation prizes. I know that. I know Alexander is their father in every way that matters. But Sarah, I'm their biological father. That has to count for something.
Why?
Because you contributed some DNA? Because you happened to be married to me when they were conceived? Because I love them. The words hung between us like a bomb waiting to explode. You don't even know them, I said quietly. I know Phoenix is protective of his siblings. I know Sage is fearless. I know River is curious about everything. I know Storm never gives up. I know they're kind and smart and beautiful, and I know they're mine. They're not yours. They're mine.
And Alexander's.
You gave up any claim to them when you walked away. I didn't know they existed, because you didn't want them to exist. You made it very clear that children with me would be a burden, a disappointment, a waste of your precious time. Mama. River's voice cut through our argument. She was running toward us, her face bright with excitement. Mama, look what I found. She held out her small hand to reveal a perfectly round, smooth stone. It's like the ones from the princess castle. Can I keep it for my collection? Of course, baby, I said, forcing a smile. It's beautiful. Can I show the sad man? She asked, looking at Darius with the open trust that children give so freely. If you want to. River walked over to Darius and held out the stone.
See?
It's perfectly round. Daddy Alex says round stones are special because the water worked really hard to make them smooth. Darius took the stone with hands that shook slightly. It's perfect, he said, his voice rough. Just like you. River beamed at the compliment, then ran back to the playground to rejoin her siblings. She's so trusting, Darius said, still staring at the stone. They all are. They don't know to be afraid of strangers or suspicious of people's motives. That's because they've never been given a reason to be. They've been surrounded by love and safety their entire lives. The life I could have given them. No, I said firmly. The life you chose not to give them. There's a difference. Sarah, please. I know I can't undo the past, but maybe we could try to build something new. For them. Like what? I don't know. Visits, maybe? Birthdays? I could be Uncle Darius or something. I just want to be part of their lives somehow. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the desperation there, the genuine pain, the regret that was eating him alive. And for just a moment I wavered. "Mama, watch this." Phoenix called from the top of the play structure. He went down the twisty slide with his arms in the air, laughing with pure joy. "Did you see that?" Darius asked, his face lighting up. "He's fearless. He gets that from Alexander," I said pointedly. The light in his eyes dimmed.
Right.
"Of course." My phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. "Saw the news about reporters. Are you and the kids okay? Should I come home?" The concern in his message, the immediate offer to drop everything and come to us. That was love. That was what a real father looked like. "I need to get them home," I said, standing up. Alexander's worried. "Of course he is. He's a good man." "Yes, he is. Better than me." I could have agreed. Should have agreed. Instead, I found myself saying, "He's different than you. That's what matters." "Sarah," Darius said as I called the children over. "This isn't over. I can't just pretend they don't exist now that I know about them. You pretended I didn't exist easily enough. That was different. Was it?" The children came running over, their faces flushed from playing, their energy finally starting to flag. "Are we going home now?" Sage asked, climbing into my lap. "Yes, baby. Daddy Alex is waiting for us." "Can the sad man come too?" Storm asked with the innocent generosity of childhood.
No, sweetheart.
"The sad man has his own home to go to." "But he looks lonely," River observed with the devastating honesty of a 4-year-old. And he did. Standing there watching us prepare to leave, Darius looked like the loneliest man in the world. "Sometimes people need to be lonely for a while," I told her, "so they can figure out how to be better." "Will he figure it out?" Phoenix asked. I looked at Darius, who was listening to every word with the intensity of a man hearing his judgment pronounced. "I don't know, baby. I hope so." "Do you think Seraphina is starting to soften toward Darius, or is she just being kind for the children's sake? And what do you think Alexander will say when he finds out about this unexpected encounter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments." As we walked back to my car, I could feel Darius watching us. When I buckled the last child into their car seat and looked back, he was still standing by the picnic table, holding River's stone like it was made of gold. For just a moment, I let myself imagine what it might have been like if he'd been different. If he'd been the kind of man who could have loved me through the hard times, who could have seen our struggles as something to face together rather than something that made me defective. But that man didn't exist. Had never existed. The man standing in that park was a stranger who happened to share DNA with my children. And no amount of regret or longing could change that fundamental truth. Could it? The house felt different when we got home. Alexander was waiting in the foyer, still in his business suit but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up, his crisis mode, look that I'd learned to recognize over the past 2 years. "Daddy Alex," the children chorused, running to him with the enthusiasm they reserved for their favorite person in the world. "There are my troublemakers," he said, scooping up Storm and Sage while Phoenix and River wrapped themselves around his legs. "I heard you had quite an adventure today." "There were scary people with cameras," River reported solemnly. "But the sad man helped us get away." Alexander's eyes found mine over the children's heads, and I saw the question there. The concern. The barely controlled anger at the situation I'd allowed to develop. "Kids, why don't you go wash your hands and get ready for a quiet time?" I suggested. "I need to talk to Daddy Alex." They scattered upstairs with the efficiency of children who knew the routine, leaving Alexander and me alone in the sudden silence. "The sad man?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Darius was there when the reporters showed up. He helped us get away." How convenient. That's what I thought. But Alex, I don't think he called them. The way he reacted when the kids got scared, it seemed genuine. Alexander loosened his tie completely, a gesture that meant he was trying very hard to stay calm. Sarah, he's been following you. That's not normal behavior. I know. I know it's not. But what? You're starting to feel sorry for him. The accusation hit closer to home than I wanted to admit.
No.
Maybe. I don't know. Alexander walked to the window, looking out at the lake where we'd had our wedding reception 2 years ago. A small, intimate ceremony with just family and close friends, the children as our flower girls and ring bearer, everyone crying happy tears as we promised to love and protect each other and the family we'd built together. Tell me what happened, he said finally. So I did. I told him about the grocery store, the reporters, Darius's intervention, the park. I told him about the children's innocent questions and Darius's obvious pain and my own confusing mix of emotions. He wants to be part of their lives, I finished. As Uncle Darius or something. And what do you want? It was such a simple question, but I found I didn't have a simple answer. I want them to be safe and happy and loved. I want them to never doubt their worth or feel like they're not enough. I want them to grow up knowing they're wanted. That's not what I asked. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what I want, Alex. 3 days ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Darius was the villain. We were the happy ending, case closed. But seeing him with them today. What about seeing him with them? He looked at them the way you do. Like they were miracles. Like they were the most precious things in the world. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Sarah, can I tell you something? Something I've never told you before. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The day you told me you were pregnant, I was terrified. What? That wasn't what I'd expected him to say. I was terrified, he repeated, coming to sit beside me. Here was this incredible woman I was falling in love with, caring for children that weren't biologically mine, and I had no idea how to be a father. I never even changed a diaper. You never said. Because I didn't want you to doubt my commitment. But Sarah, I was 39 years old, set in my ways, used to a life where my biggest responsibility was making sure my housekeeper got paid on time. And suddenly I was going to be responsible for 4 tiny humans who would depend on me for everything. I stared at him, this man who'd stepped into our lives like he'd been waiting for us his whole life, who'd never once made me feel like we were a burden or an inconvenience. What changed? I asked. The first time Phoenix called me Daddy Alex. He was 8 months old, barely walking, and he fell down and scraped his knee. You were in the shower, and he came crawling to me, crying, and when I picked him up, he said, Daddy, clear as day. And I realized that biology doesn't make you a father. Choice does. Love does. Showing up every day does. Alex, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty about Darius. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Those children are mine not because I adopted them, but because I chose them. Every day, I choose them. I choose you. I choose this family we've built together. Tears were streaming down my face now. I know that. I've never doubted that. Good. Because what I'm about to say might sound crazy. He took my hands in his dark eyes serious. If you think there's a chance, even a small one, that having Darius in their lives somehow could be good for them, then we should consider it. What? I'm not threatened by him, Sarah. I know who their father is. I know who they run to when they're scared, who they want to read them bedtime stories, who they trust to keep them safe. That's not going to change because their biological father suddenly wants to play a role. But what if? What if what? What if they love him too? Love isn't finite, sweetheart. The kids loving Darius, if that ever happens, doesn't mean they'll love me less. I stared at my husband, this incredible man who just offered to share our children with the man who'd hurt me more than anyone else in the world. How are you so calm about this? Because I've seen you with him, Sarah. I've seen the way you look when his name comes up, the way you've been since the wedding. You're not over what he did to you. I am over him. I didn't say you weren't over him. I said you weren't over what he did to you. There's a difference. He was right, and we both knew it. You need closure, Alexander continued. Real closure. Not the kind you get from a dramatic confrontation at a wedding, but the kind that comes from understanding who he really is now, what he really wants, and whether he's capable of being the kind of person who deserves to know our children. And if he's not, then we'll deal with that too. Together. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, it's Darius. I got your number from your sister. Please don't block me. I have something I need to show you. Something about why I really sent that invitation. I showed Alexander the message. Well, he said, reading it over my shoulder. I guess we're about to find out what this is really about. Should I respond? That's up to you.
But Sarah?
Whatever you decide, whatever happens next, remember that you're not the same woman he left 3 years ago. You're stronger now. You know your worth. And you have a family who loves you unconditionally. I looked at the message again, then at Alexander, then upstairs where I could hear our children playing in their rooms. What if this is a mistake? Then we'll learn from it. Together. I took a deep breath and typed back. What do you want to show me? The response came immediately. Can you meet me tomorrow? Alone? There's something you need to understand about that invitation, about why I really sent it. Something I should have told you years ago. I showed Alexander the message. Your choice, he said simply. I thought about the man in the park today, holding River's stone like it was precious. I thought about the pain in his eyes when the children talked about their daddy Alex. I thought about the questions that had been eating at me for 3 years. 1 hour. Willowmere Commons. 2 p.m. And Darius? This better be worth it. Are you sure about this? Alexander asked. No, I admitted. But I think I need to know. What I didn't know was that tomorrow's revelation would change everything I thought I understood about my marriage, my divorce, and the man I'd once loved. I almost didn't go. 3 times I started the car, and 3 times I turned it off again, sitting in our driveway and questioning my sanity. Alexander had taken the afternoon off to watch the children, kissing me goodbye with the kind of trust that made my chest ache. Whatever he tells you, he'd said, remember that it doesn't change who we are now. But as I finally drove toward Willowmere Commons, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change anyway. Darius was already there when I arrived, sitting at the same picnic table where we'd talked yesterday. He looked different somehow, smaller, more vulnerable. The expensive suit had been replaced with jeans and a simple button-down shirt, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Thank you for coming, he said as I approached, not quite meeting my eyes. You have 1 hour, I replied, sitting across from him but keeping my distance. Start talking. He pulled out a manila envelope, thick with papers, and set it between us like an offering. Do you remember Patricia's birthday party? The one right before I filed for divorce. I remembered. His mother's 60th birthday celebration at the country club, where I'd spent the evening listening to passive-aggressive comments about my failure to produce grandchildren while Darius networked with his business associates. What about it? Do you remember Dr. Harrison being there? My mother's friend from the hospital board? Dr. Harrison, a fertility specialist with a reputation for working miracles. I'd begged Darius to let me see him, but he'd always said we couldn't afford his fees. I remember.
He pulled me aside that night.
Said he'd heard about our struggles and wanted to help. Darius's hands were shaking as he opened the envelope. He said he'd been following your case through Dr. Martinez, and he had some concerns about your treatment plan. My blood went cold. What kind of concerns? He said the medications you were on, the hormone treatments, the fertility drugs, they were all wrong for your specific condition. He said Dr. Martinez had misdiagnosed you, that what you actually had was completely treatable with a simple surgical procedure. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. Dr. Martinez ran every test. Dr. Harrison ran his own tests. Without telling you, Darius pulled out a thick medical file. He had samples from your previous blood work analyzed by his lab. Sarah, you never had unexplained infertility. You had a blocked fallopian tube that could have been fixed with outpatient surgery. I stared at the papers he was pushing toward me, the medical terminology swimming before my eyes. You're lying. I wish I was. His voice broke. Dr. Harrison said that with the surgery, your chances of conceiving naturally would have been over 90%. He said we could have had children within 6 months. Then why? I couldn't finish the question. Couldn't process what he was telling me. Because I didn't tell you. The words hung between us like a death sentence. What? I didn't tell you about Dr. Harrison's findings. I didn't tell you about the surgery. I didn't tell you that everything we'd been through, all those years of treatments and disappointment and you blaming yourself, it was all unnecessary. I felt like I was drowning. Why? Because I was a coward. Tears were streaming down his face now. Because by the time Dr. Harrison told me, I'd already started having doubts about our marriage. I'd already started thinking that maybe we weren't meant to be together, that maybe the fertility issues were a sign. So you let me believe I was broken. I let you believe you were broken because it was easier than admitting I was the one who was broken. It was easier than facing the fact that I was having second thoughts about our marriage and using your supposed infertility as an excuse. The medical file was still sitting between us, pages of evidence that my entire understanding of my own body had been a lie, that the years of feeling defective, of believing I was somehow less than other women, had all been based on a misdiagnosis that could have been corrected with a simple procedure. You let me go through 3 more months of treatments, I whispered. 3 more months of shots and hormones and hope, knowing the whole time that it was pointless. I know. You let me blame myself when you filed for divorce. You let me think it was my fault that our marriage failed. I know. You called me defective goods, knowing that I wasn't effective at all. Sarah,
How?
The word came out as a scream. How could you do that to someone you claimed to love? Because I was selfish and scared and stupid, and I thought if I could make it your fault, I wouldn't have to face the fact that I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too immature to handle real commitment. I stood up so fast the picnic table rocked. I need to leave. Sarah, please.
No.
No, I can't. I can't process this right now. But I didn't leave. Instead, I found myself pacing back and forth beside the table, my mind racing through the implications of what he'd just told me. The invitation, I said suddenly. You said this was about why you sent the invitation. Darius wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. After Vivian and I got engaged, I started having nightmares. About you. About what I'd done. I kept dreaming that you'd found out the truth, that you were standing in front of me asking why I'd let you suffer when I could have saved you. So, you decided to torture me some more by inviting me to your wedding? I decided to confess. He pulled out another paper from the envelope. This is the letter I wrote to go with the invitation. The one I was too much of a coward to send. I took the letter with trembling hands. It was 3 pages long, handwritten in Darius's careful script. An apology, a confession, a plea for forgiveness that he knew he didn't deserve. I wrote it and rewrote it a dozen times, he said. I wanted to tell you everything, to give you Dr. Harrison's files, to beg you to forgive me. But every time I tried to send it, I chickened out. So instead you sent a wedding invitation designed to hurt me. Instead I convinced myself that seeing me happy would give you closure. That maybe if you saw me moving on, you could move on too, and I could stop feeling guilty about what I'd done. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Closure. You thought watching you marry another woman would give me closure. I told you I was a coward. You're not a coward, Darius. You're a monster. The words hit him like a physical blow, but he didn't argue, didn't defend himself. Just sat there and took it like he deserved it, which he did. Sarah, he said quietly, there's something else.
More?
What else could there possibly be? The children. The quadruplets. Dr. Harrison said that your specific condition, the blocked tube, it often corrects itself during pregnancy. Especially multiple pregnancies. He said that's probably what happened when you conceived them. What are you saying? I'm saying that if I told you about the surgery 3 years ago, if we'd fixed the problem then, you might never have had the quadruplets. The stress of our divorce, the emotional trauma, Dr. Harrison thinks that's what caused your body to finally heal itself. I stared at him, trying to process this final twist of fate. So you're saying that your betrayal, your cruelty, your abandonment, that's what gave me my children? I'm saying that maybe the universe has a plan we can't understand. Maybe everything that happened, as horrible as it was, led you to where you needed to be. With Alexander. With Alexander. With a man who deserves you. With the family you were always meant to have. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 3 years of lies and pain and misunderstanding settling between us. Why are you telling me this now? I asked finally. Because seeing you at the wedding, seeing those beautiful children, seeing how happy you are, it made me realize that my guilt isn't about you anymore. It's about me. It's about the fact that I have to live with what I did for the rest of my life. Good, I said viciously. You should live with it. I know. And I will. But Sarah, I need you to know that I'm not trying to get you back. I'm not trying to break up your family or confuse the children or cause problems in your marriage. Then what do you want? I want to be better. I want to be the kind of man who could have been worthy of you and those children. I want to earn the right to know them, even if it's just as a family friend. And you think telling me this, showing me how much worse your betrayal was than I even knew, you think that's going to make me trust you with my children? No, he said simply. I think it's going to make you understand that I know exactly what I lost, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of even the smallest place in their world. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. Real understanding of the magnitude of what he'd done. The beginning of actual growth. It didn't forgive what he'd done. Nothing could do that. But it was something. I need time, I said, gathering up the medical files. I need to process this, to talk to Alexander, to figure out what this means for our family. Of course. And Darius? If I decide to give you a chance, and that's a very big if, it won't be because I forgive you. It'll be because my children deserve to know all the people who love them, even the ones who don't deserve to. I understand. Do you? Because if you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you make them feel for even 1 second like they're not enough, I will destroy you. Alexander's lawyers are good, but my protective instincts are better. I know. I stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Vivian. Is she okay? She's staying with her sister. The baby, she lost the baby. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Darius, I'm so sorry. She said the stress of the wedding, of finding out about the children, the doctor said it probably would have happened anyway, but she blames me. She blames us. She has every right to. I know. I looked at this broken man, this person who'd caused so much pain and was now drowning in the consequences of his choices, and felt something I never expected to feel for him again. Pity. Get help, Darius. Real help. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Because if you want any chance of being part of their lives, you need to become someone worthy of that privilege. I will. I promise. Don't promise me. Promise them. And then prove it. What do you think about these shocking revelations? Do you believe Darius deserves a second chance, or has he done too much damage to ever be trusted again? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Seraphina's decision will affect not just her, but her entire family. As I walked back to my car, the medical files clutched in my hands like evidence of a crime, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my past had just been rewritten. The question now was, what did I want to do about my future? The drive home was a blur of tears and rage and confusion. I sat in our driveway for 20 minutes, staring at the medical files on my passenger seat, trying to figure out how to walk into my house and tell my husband that everything we thought we knew about our love story was built on a lie. When I finally went inside, Alexander was in the kitchen making dinner while the children played in the living room. The scene was so perfectly normal, so beautifully domestic, that it made my chest ache. "How did it go?" he asked, looking up from the stove with that gentle smile that had been my anchor for the past 3 years. I set the files on the counter between us like a bomb. "He lied about everything," I said simply. Alexander's smile faded as he took in my tear-stained face, the tremor in my hands. "What do you mean?" So I told him. Everything. The misdiagnosis, the blocked tube, the surgery that could have fixed everything, Darius's decision to let me suffer rather than face his own doubts about our marriage. I watched Alexander's face cycle through shock, anger, and something that looked almost like grief. "Jesus, Sarah," he whispered when I finished. "All those years you blamed yourself. All those years I thought I was broken, and he knew. He knew I wasn't, and he let me believe it anyway." Alexander reached for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't handle comfort right now. Couldn't handle the gentleness in his eyes when I felt like I was made of broken glass. "There's more," I said. "More?" "The children. Dr. Harrison thinks that the stress of the divorce, the emotional trauma, that's what finally caused my body to heal itself. If Darius had told me about the surgery 3 years ago, if we'd stayed married and fixed the problem then, you might never have had the quadruplets," Alexander finished, understanding immediately. "Which means I might never have met you." The words hung between us like a chasm, because that was the horrible, twisted irony of it all. Darius's betrayal had led me to the greatest happiness of my life. His cruelty had given me my children and my husband and the family I'd always dreamed of. "Sarah," Alexander said carefully, "what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I don't know who I am anymore. I'm thinking that everything I believed about my past, about why my marriage failed, about why I couldn't have children, it was all a lie. But it led you here, to us. Did it? Or did I just convince myself that this was meant to be because it was easier than facing the truth?" Alexander went very still. "What truth?" "That maybe I only fell in love with you because I was broken and grateful and desperate to prove that I could be wanted by someone." The words came out like poison, and I saw them hit Alexander like physical blows. His face went pale, his hands gripping the edge of the counter. "You don't mean that, don't I? Think about it, Alex. I was a mess when we met. Divorced, supposedly infertile, convinced I was defective. And you were this successful, gorgeous man who swooped in and saved me. Made me feel worthy again. Gave me everything I thought I could never have." "Sarah, stop. What if I never actually loved you? What if I just loved what you represented? The proof that I wasn't broken after all." "Stop." His voice was sharp now, angry. "You're hurting and you're lashing out, but you don't get to rewrite our entire relationship because you're angry at Darius. Our entire relationship is based on a lie." "No, it's not. Our relationship is based on 2 years of building a life together. It's based on me falling in love with you and the children, and you falling in love with me. It's based on trust and partnership and the family we've created. But what if? What if nothing?" Alexander slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. "What if you'd never been married to Darius? What if you'd met me first? What if the children were biologically mine? What if? What if? What if?" You can drive yourself crazy with what ifs, Sarah, but it doesn't change what is. And what is? What is that I love you. Not because you were broken, and I fixed you, not because you came with 4 beautiful children, not because you needed saving. I love you because you're strong and fierce and funny and kind. I love you because you make me want to be better than I am. I love you because when I wake up next to you, I feel like the luckiest man alive. Tears were streaming down my face now. But what if I can't love you back the same way? What if I'm too damaged, too confused, too? Then we'll figure it out. Together. Like we always do. Alex.
No, Sarah.
I'm not going to let you blow up our family because you're scared. I'm not going to let Darius destroy what we've built, even from a distance. This isn't about Darius, isn't it? Because it seems like the moment he shows up with his sob story and his medical files, suddenly you're questioning everything about us. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would be you trusting that what we have is real. Fair would be you believing that I know the difference between love and gratitude. Fair would be you not throwing away 2 years of happiness because your ex-husband finally decided to tell the truth. I'm not throwing anything away. Then what are you doing? I opened my mouth to answer and realized I didn't know. I was spiraling, drowning in revelations and guilt and confusion, and I was taking Alexander down with me. Mama? Daddy Alex. Phoenix's small voice cut through our argument. He was standing in the doorway, his green eyes wide with concern. Why are you yelling? Alexander and I both froze, staring at our son, because he was our son, in every way that mattered, and seeing the fear on his face. We're not yelling, buddy, Alexander said, his voice immediately gentle. We're just having a grown-up discussion. It sounds like yelling, Sage said, appearing beside her brother with River and Storm behind her. All 4 children looked worried, uncertain, like their safe world was suddenly shifting beneath their feet. Are you getting divorced? River asked with the devastating directness of a 4-year-old. No, I said quickly, dropping to my knees to gather them close. No, babies, we're not getting divorced. Mama and Daddy Alex just had a disagreement, but we're going to work it out. Like when Storm and I fight over toys? Phoenix asked. Exactly like that, Alexander said, crouching down beside me. Sometimes people who love each other disagree, but it doesn't mean they stop loving each other. Do you still love Mama? Sage asked him directly. More than anything in the world, Alexander replied without hesitation, his eyes meeting mine over the children's heads. Do you still love Daddy Alex?
Storm asked me.
The question hung in the air like a challenge. 4 pairs of eyes stared at me, waiting for an answer that would either reassure them or shatter their world. Yes, I whispered. I love Daddy Alex very much. Then why were you fighting? River wanted to know. Because sometimes when people are scared or confused, they say things they don't mean. I explained, hating myself for putting that fear in their eyes. Are you scared, Mama? Phoenix asked. A little bit, baby, but not of Daddy Alex. Never of Daddy Alex. Then what are you scared of? How do you explain to a 4-year-old that you're scared of your own heart? That you're terrified of the possibility that everything you believe about love and family and belonging might be built on a foundation of lies? I'm scared of making mistakes, I said finally. Of hurting the people I love. But Daddy Alex says mistakes are for learning, Sage reminded me, echoing the wisdom Alexander had taught them. That's right, Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. And your Mama and I are going to learn from this mistake and be better. Promise? Storm asked. Promise, we said together. The children seemed satisfied with this explanation and wandered back to their toys, but the damage was done. I could see it in Alexander's eyes, the hurt and doubt that my words had planted there. Alex, I started, but he held up a hand. I need some air, he said quietly. I'm going for a walk. Don't leave. Please. I'm not leaving, Sarah. I need to think. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, pausing only to call out to the children that he'd be back soon. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of the life we'd built together. Finger paintings on the refrigerator, school permission slips on the counter, family photos covering every surface, and realized what I'd just done. I'd let Darius's poison seep into the one pure thing in my life. I'd let his guilt and manipulation make me question the love that had saved me, the man who'd never given me a reason to doubt him, the family that had healed every broken part of me. My phone buzzed. A text from Darius. I know today was hard. If you need to talk, I'm here. I stared at the message, at this man who'd just blown up my world with his confessions, now offering himself as comfort for the chaos he'd created. And I realized that this was exactly what he'd wanted all along. Not to win me back, not to reclaim his children, but to destroy the happiness he couldn't stand to see me have. To make me question everything good in my life until I was as miserable and lost as he was. I deleted the message without responding and ran upstairs to our bedroom, where I pulled out the photo album from our wedding day. Page after page of pure joy, Alexander's face when he saw me in my dress, the children's excitement as they walked down the aisle, the moment we'd all danced together as a family for the first time. This was real. This love, this family, this life we'd built together, it was real. And I'd almost thrown it away because a broken man had convinced me that happiness built on pain couldn't be trusted. Do you think Seraphina has realized her mistake in time, or has she already damaged her relationship with Alexander beyond repair? And what do you think Alexander is thinking during his walk? Let me know in the comments, because the next few hours will determine the fate of this family. I heard the front door open and Alexander's footsteps on the stairs. When he appeared in the doorway, his face was carefully neutral, but I could see the hurt still lingering in his eyes. The kids are asking for bedtime stories, he said quietly. Alex, we need to talk. After bedtime stories. They've been through enough today. He was right, of course. The children came first. They always came first. But as we went through the familiar routine of baths and pajamas and bedtime stories, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching our family from the outside, like it was something fragile that might disappear if I looked away. And maybe it was. Maybe I'd already broken the most precious thing I'd ever had. The children were finally asleep, their rooms quiet except for the soft sound of their breathing and the gentle hum of their nightlights. Alexander and I stood in the hallway between their bedrooms, the weight of our earlier fight hanging between us like a wall. We should talk, I said softly. Should we? His voice was tired, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. Because I'm not sure I can handle you questioning our entire relationship again tonight. Alex, please. I know I hurt you. I know I said terrible things, but what, Sarah? But you didn't mean them? But you were just scared? But Darius made you temporarily insane. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I recognized. I need you to understand something. When you asked if you only loved me because you were broken and grateful, when you suggested that our entire relationship was built on a lie, that wasn't just hurtful. That was devastating. We moved downstairs to the living room, where the remnants of our normal evening were scattered around, coloring books on the coffee table, a half-finished puzzle on the floor, the children's shoes kicked off by the couch. Evidence of the life we'd built, the family we'd become. I know, I whispered. I know it was devastating, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Alex. Are you? Or are you just sorry that I'm upset? He sat heavily on the couch, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Because there's a difference, Sarah. There's a difference between regretting that you hurt someone and regretting what you said. I sat across from him, close enough to touch, but somehow feeling miles away. I regret what I said. I regret questioning us, questioning you, questioning everything we've built together. But do you believe it? Do you actually believe that what we have is real, or are you just saying what you think I need to hear? The question hung between us like a test I wasn't sure I could pass. Because the truth was, I was still reeling from Darius's revelations. Still trying to process the fact that my entire understanding of my past had been rewritten in the space of an hour. I'm confused, I admitted. I'm hurt and angry and confused, and I don't know how to separate what I'm feeling about Darius from what I'm feeling about us. Then let me help you. Alexander leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. Let me tell you what I see when I look at our relationship. Alex. No, let me finish. I see a woman who is strong enough to leave a marriage that was destroying her. I see someone who rebuilt her life from nothing, who carried 4 babies through a difficult pregnancy while dealing with divorce and heartbreak and the fear that she might have to raise them alone. Tears were starting to fall, but I didn't interrupt. I see a woman who opened her heart to love again, even though she'd been betrayed and abandoned. I see someone who trusted me with her children, who let me into their lives when she had every reason to be cautious. But what if? What if you only loved me because you were vulnerable? Sarah, we were both vulnerable when we met. I was 40 years old, convinced I'd missed my chance at having a family. I'd spent so many years focused on building my business that I'd forgotten how to build a life. I stared at him, this man who'd always seemed so confident, so sure of himself. You think I fell in love with you because you needed saving? I fell in love with you because you saved me. You and those 4 incredible children showed me what I'd been missing, what I'd been too scared to want. Alex, do you remember our first real conversation? Not the polite small talk at your sister's dinner party, but the real one. You were in the park with the babies, and Phoenix had just taken his first steps. You were crying because you were so happy, but also because you wished you had someone to share it with. I remembered. The children had been 10 months old, and I'd been struggling with the loneliness of single motherhood despite being surrounded by love and support. I told you that I'd never seen anything more beautiful than a mother celebrating her child's milestone, Alexander continued. And you laughed and said that I was probably just being polite because you looked like a mess. I did look like a mess. Spit up on my shirt, no makeup, hair in a ponytail that hadn't been washed in 3 days. You looked like love, Sarah. You looked like everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. And when you let me buy you coffee and listen to you talk about the children, when you trusted me enough to share your fears about raising them alone, that's when I knew. Knew what? That I wanted to be the person you shared those moments with. Not because you needed saving, but because I needed you. I needed the way you made me laugh, the way you challenged me to be better, the way you loved those children with your whole heart. I was crying openly now, remembering those early days when everything had felt so fragile and new. The first time Phoenix called me Daddy Alex, do you know what I thought? I shook my head. I thought, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. Not the title, not the role, but the feeling of belonging to something bigger than myself. The feeling of being chosen by this incredible woman and her amazing children. But what if Darius is right? What if everything that happened, his betrayal, my pain, us meeting, what if it was all just random chance? What if there's no grand plan, no meant to be, just a series of accidents that led us here? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, considering my question with the seriousness it deserved. Maybe it was random chance, he said finally. Maybe there's no grand plan. Maybe we're just 2 people who found each other in the wreckage of our separate lives and decided to build something beautiful together. And that's enough for you? Sarah, that's everything to me. The fact that out of all the possible paths our lives could have taken, out of all the ways things could have gone wrong, somehow we found each other? That's not diminished by being random. That makes it miraculous. I looked at this man who just articulated everything I'd been too scared to believe, and felt something shift inside me. The confusion and doubt that had been clouding my thoughts began to clear, replaced by a certainty that felt like coming home. I love you, I said, the words coming out stronger than I'd expected. Not because you saved me, not because I was grateful or broken or desperate. I love you because you're kind and patient and funny. I love you because you read bedtime stories in different voices and you never complain when the children want to build blanket forts in the living room. Sarah, I love you because you see me. Really see me. Not the woman I was when I was married to Darius, not the broken person I became after the divorce, but who I am now. Who I've become because of the life we've built together. Alexander reached for me then, pulling me onto the couch beside him, and I melted into his warmth like I was coming back to myself. I love you because when I look at our future, I can't imagine it without you. I continued, my face pressed against his chest. I love you because you chose us. Every day, even when it was hard, even when I was difficult, even when I questioned everything we'd built together. Even when you temporarily lost your mind because your ex-husband decided to have a crisis of conscience? I pulled back to look at him, seeing the hint of a smile in his eyes. Especially then. Good, he said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Because I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Not because of Darius, not because of his revelations, not because of anything. This is my family. You are my family. And I'll fight for us as long as you'll let me. What if I want to let Darius see the children? What if I think they deserve to know their biological father? Then we'll figure it out. Together. But Sarah, whatever we decide about Darius, it doesn't change us. It doesn't change the fact that I'm their father in every way that matters. It doesn't change the fact that this is their home, their family, their safe place. And if he tries to confuse them, if he tries to make them think, then we'll handle it. We'll remind them every day how much they're loved, how wanted they are, how secure their place in this family is. We'll make sure they know that love isn't finite, that having more people care about them doesn't diminish what we have. I stared at this incredible man who was offering to share our children with the person who'd hurt me most, and felt my heart expand with a love so fierce it took my breath away. How are you so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just sure. Sure of you. Sure of us. Sure of what we've built together. And Sarah? I need you to be sure too. Because I can't keep having this conversation every time Darius decides to drop a bombshell into our lives. I am sure, I said and meant it. I'm sure that I love you. I'm sure that you're the best father those children could ask for. I'm sure that what we have is real and precious and worth fighting for. Even if it started with pain, even if we found each other because of someone else's betrayal, especially because of that, because it means we know how rare this is, how easily it could be lost, how much it's worth protecting. Alexander kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. So, what do we do about Darius? We decide together. As a family, we talk to the children, age appropriately, about the fact that they have a biological father who wants to know them. We set boundaries. We protect what we've built while maybe, possibly, allowing room for something new. And if it doesn't work out, if he disappoints them or hurts them or proves that he hasn't really changed, then we'll be here to pick up the pieces. Together. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another message from Darius. I know I don't have the right to ask, but please don't let what I told you destroy what you have with Alexander. You deserve the happiness you've found. I showed Alexander the message. Well, he said, reading it over my shoulder. Maybe he really is changed. Maybe. Or maybe he's just smart enough to know that destroying our marriage won't get him what he wants. And what does he want? I think he wants to be forgiven. I think he wants to believe that he's not the monster he knows he is. And I think he wants to be part of something good for once in his life. Can you forgive him? I thought about it, really thought about it. About the years of pain and self-doubt, about the lies and the betrayal, about the woman I'd been when he left me and the woman I'd become since. I don't know if I can forgive him, I said finally. But I think I can forgive myself for loving him once. And I think I can forgive myself for being angry at him now. And maybe that's enough to start with. More than enough, Alexander agreed. We sat together in the quiet of our living room, surrounded by the evidence of our life together, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Darius had walked back into our world.
Peace.
Not because the situation was resolved, it wasn't. Not because the path forward was clear, it wasn't that either. But because I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever came next, we would face it together. And that was enough. That was everything. 6 months later, I stood in our backyard watching Alexander push Storm on the swing while Phoenix and River raced around the playground equipment we'd installed last spring. Sage was in her favorite spot under the oak tree, carefully arranging her rock collection, a hobby that had started with that smooth stone she'd found at Darius's wedding reception. "Higher, Daddy Alex." Storm squealed, his laughter carrying across the yard like music. "Any higher and you'll fly away," Alexander called back, but he pushed a little harder anyway, earning another delighted shriek. It was a perfect Saturday afternoon in late fall, the kind of day that made you grateful for the simple miracle of family. The kind of day I dreamed of during those dark months after my divorce, when I thought I'd never have children or love, or the sound of laughter in my own backyard. "Mama." River ran over, her cheeks flushed from playing. "Uncle Darius is here." I looked toward the side gate and saw him walking across the lawn, carrying a bag that I knew contained 4 carefully chosen books, one for each child, selected based on their individual interests. It had become his tradition over the past few months, these Saturday afternoon visits that had slowly, carefully become part of our routine. "Uncle Darius." Phoenix abandoned his game of tag and ran toward him, followed quickly by Storm. Sage looked up from her rocks and waved, while River bounced excitedly beside me. "Hey, troublemakers," Darius said, crouching down to accept their enthusiastic hugs. "Did you miss me?" "We always miss you," Sage said with the matter-of-fact honesty of a 4-year-old. "But we know you'll come back because you promised." "That's right," Darius replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I always keep my promises to you." It had taken 3 months of supervised visits, family therapy sessions, and countless conversations before we'd reached this point. 3 months of watching Darius prove that he was serious about becoming the kind of person who deserved to know our children. 3 months of him showing up consistently, respecting boundaries, and putting their needs before his own desires. "What did you bring us?" Storm asked, eyeing the bag with the barely contained excitement of a child who'd learned that Uncle Darius always brought the best stories. "Well," Darius said, settling onto the picnic blanket we'd spread under the oak tree, "I found a book about a little girl who collects magical stones, and I thought Sage might like it." Sage's eyes lit up as he handed her a beautifully illustrated book about a young geologist. "Are the stones really magical?" "You'll have to read it to find out," Darius said with a wink. He distributed the other books, A Dinosaur Adventure for Phoenix, a story about brave explorers for River, and a tale about a boy who never gave up for Storm. Each choice was thoughtful, personal, proof that he'd been paying attention to who they were as individuals. "Will you read them to us?" River asked, already settling beside him on the blanket. "Of course." I watched from my spot on the porch as Darius opened the first book, his voice taking on different characters as he read. The children were captivated, hanging on every word, occasionally interrupting with questions or observations that he answered with infinite patience. Alexander appeared beside me, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "How's he doing?" "Good," I said, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "Really good, actually. Look at how they respond to him." And they did. Over the months, the children had grown to genuinely love their Uncle Darius. They looked forward to his visits, asked about him during the week, and had begun to trust him with their secrets and fears and excitement about small things. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked, settling into the chair beside me. "About letting him into their lives?"
No.
"About the way it all happened?" "Sometimes." It was an honest answer. I didn't regret giving Darius a chance to know his children, but I sometimes wondered what our lives would have looked like if he'd been brave enough to tell the truth 3 years ago. If we'd been able to work through our problems instead of letting them destroy us. But then I looked at Alexander, at this man who'd become the center of our world, and I knew that some paths were worth taking even if they led through darkness first. "Mama." "Daddy Alex." Phoenix called from the blanket. "Come listen to the story." We joined the group under the oak tree, Alexander settling behind me so I could lean against his chest while we listened to Darius read about magical stones and brave adventures. It was a scene that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The five of us together, peaceful and happy, with no tension or awkwardness. "The end," Darius said, closing the last book as the sun began to set. "Another one," Storm demanded, but Sage shook her head. "Uncle Darius has to go home soon," she said wisely. "But he'll come back next Saturday." "That's right," Darius confirmed. "I'll always come back." The children began gathering their books, chattering about their favorite parts of the stories, while Darius helped clean up the blanket. It was such a normal, domestic scene that it was easy to forget how complicated the journey to this moment had been. "Darius," I said as the children ran off to put their books in their rooms, "can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." Alexander squeezed my shoulder and headed inside to start dinner, giving us privacy for the conversation I'd been planning for weeks. "I have something for you," I said, pulling an envelope from my pocket. Darius took it with curious eyes, opening it carefully. Inside were copies of the children's latest school photos, along with a letter I'd written the night before. "What's this?" "Read it." He unfolded the letter, his eyes scanning the words I'd chosen so carefully. "Darius, 6 months ago, you gave me medical files that changed everything I thought I knew about my past. Today, I want to give you something that might change your future. These are your children. Not biologically, that's just genetics. But in every way that matters, they're yours now too. You've earned the right to call them yours through consistency, patience, and love." I'm not saying this to hurt Alexander or to confuse the children. I'm saying it because I've watched you become the kind of man who deserves to be their uncle, their friend, their safe place when they need someone who understands them in a way that's different from how Alex and I do. You'll never be their father. That role belongs to Alexander, and it always will. But you can be something else, something equally important. You can be the person who shows them that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define us, that love can grow even in the most unlikely places. The children don't know the full story of our past, and they don't need to. What they know is that Uncle Darius loves them, shows up for them, and makes them feel special. That's enough. That's everything. Thank you for proving that you could become the man I always hoped you were. Sarah. When he finished reading, there were tears streaming down his face. Sarah, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just keep being the person you've become. Keep showing up. Keep loving them the way they deserve to be loved. I will. I promise. I know you will. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd hurt each other deeply but had somehow found a way to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Can I ask you something? Darius said. Of course. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me? I considered the question, thinking about the woman I'd been when he left me and the woman I'd become since. Thinking about the pain he'd caused and the growth that had come from it. Thinking about the children laughing in our house and the man inside making dinner for our family. I think I already have, I said, and realized it was true. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to that anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank them. I nodded toward the house, where we could hear the children's voices mixing with Alexander's laughter. They're the ones who taught me that love isn't finite, that families can take all kinds of shapes, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Uncle Darius. River's voice called from the back door. Are you staying for dinner? Darius looked at me questioningly. If you want to, I said. Alexander's making his famous spaghetti and meatballs. I'd love to. As we walked toward the house together, I felt a sense of completion that I hadn't expected. Not because our story had a perfect ending. There would still be challenges, still be moments of difficulty as we navigated this new normal. But because we'd found a way to honor the past while building something better for the future. Sarah, Darius said as we reached the back door, I need you to know something.
What?
Seeing you with Alexander, seeing how happy you are, how loved the children are, it doesn't make me sad anymore. It makes me grateful. Grateful? Grateful that my mistakes led you to where you needed to be. Grateful that the children have the father they deserve. Grateful that I get to be part of their lives, even if it's not in the way I once imagined. Darius. And grateful that you're strong enough to let me try to be better. Not everyone would have given me that chance. Inside the house, Alexander was teaching the children how to make garlic bread while music played softly in the background. It was chaos and laughter and the beautiful mess of family life. "Come on," I said, opening the door. "Let's go home." And we did. All of us, together, walking into the warm light of our kitchen where dinner was waiting and children were giggling and love lived in every corner. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I'd walked into that wedding reception 6 months ago. It was better. Because sometimes the best stories aren't about getting what you thought you wanted. They're about discovering that what you actually needed was more beautiful than anything you could have planned. What did you think of this journey from heartbreak to healing? Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you, or found forgiveness in an unexpected place? Share your story in the comments below, because sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when we're brave enough to let love grow in new ways. As I watched my husband teach my children to cook while their biological father set the table, I realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not simple, but real and messy, and full of the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The little girl who'd once been told she was broken had become a woman who knew that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the deepest cracks. And that was a story worth telling.